Now we're going to get into some sales. Obviously, this is commercial apartment building sales. Last year was really affected by a few big sales. There were several large sales that took place in the third quarter of 2022, and that really drove this up. Those were big complexes, and so they had a high input on the volume. But as you can see, this is a pretty healthy market, much healthier than where we were experiencing from the last downturn. And you can see that this is really taking place. The other thing I would take note of is third quarter seems to be the strongest quarter for apartment sales at this time. All right, I think all of you that are familiar with me understand this concept of a cap rate. The cap rate is the net operating income after all the expenses are taken out and divided by the purchase price that it costs you to get that income. So that's a simple way to look at it. What income do you actually get after all the expenses, and cost divided by the amount of money it costs you to get that income. And so that's what this is. I would say a couple of things that stand out here. This is not very really very spotty because it's done over long periods of time. These are probably quarterly measurements as they go through. So as you look at this is everything after this is a projection. I think sometimes with charts, it's very easy to forget that. They're projecting that these things will happen, right? And so those are pretty big assumptions, basically, that the projectors are making. And in this case, it's CoStar making the projections. And what they're basically saying is, depending on what interest rates do, will determine on what happens here. So that's a big deal. What's not really counted in a cap rate situation is the cost of funding it, right? The cost of the mortgage payment is not included in the cap rate. And so I think that's a very big deal. All the other operating expenses are, but the mortgage payment is not, because it allows you to measure an investment based purely on the fundamentals of the investment and not get it confused by the fundamentals of the buyer, right? So some buyers might require a larger down payment than other buyers. Some buyers might put cash into it and not have any loan. And so that's why financing is not included in that. But as you can imagine, the cost of the properties, the cost of the financing will directly affect how many units are sold and how many properties are sold and whether the market's hot or not hot, right? That market being hot or not hot is going to drive demand. And so demand is going to drive price. And that's also true in the single family as well. So if your buyers can't afford to buy, then they're not going to buy, and then prices are going to come down. But where we can see it right now is there's a couple of things of note. Is one, the rest of the U.S. generally has a higher cap rate than California does, than Sacramento does, especially since Sacramento, but definitely California. The rest of the U.S. runs cap rates that are a little higher. And down here, you can see that the higher quality the property, Sacramento 4 to 5 star, the less the cap rate. And and so that's the spread you pay for having a property in Roseville or having a property in Del Paso. And so there's the spread right there. And so you just have to decide how much is that spread worth to you and to get that extra return. I would actually say Del Paso might even be up here, but you get the idea. The Sacramento market as a whole is right here. The 4 to 5 star is here, and the 3 star is here. I would say that 2 star is probably up here. Okay.